you struggle with decision making in tough situations, avoid playing ranked game modes, or get annoyed when you should be having fun playing games? This is most likely due to anxiety. Everyone has it, but maybe not to a clinically intrusive extent, but generally we all have it. It's what helps us to stay alert when we really need it, but sometimes this instinct can become hyperactive and hurt us more than help us. The purpose of this video is to identify how anxiety exists in video gaming scenarios and to provide some tips that work for me in managing anxiety to improve how much fun and how well I performed while playing games. Unlike trauma that revolves around past events, anxiety is a fear that revolves around potential events or the future. You may have experienced a toxic encounter in the past playing a PvP game mode, and as a result, you have anxiety that you will experience that again if you go into PvP. While this isn't an irrational thought, because it's absolutely true that you can have toxic encounters in competitive situations, how likely is it going to happen? This is why thinking about statistics is important. Many people have a fear of flying on airplanes, but the average American has 1 in 11 million chance to die in a plane crash every year. Now obviously, if you go on more planes than the average American, you have a higher chance, and the longer you live, the more you have to experience that risk, but that's extremely low still. But it's also out of your control. If you can't control something, worrying about it does nothing for you. However, that's not the case for vehicular accidents. The risk of being in a fatal car crash is 1 in 5,000, which is not only much more likely, but also more in your control. Having anxiety while driving is actually useful because it can motivate you to be more alert, get your parts checked regularly, and avoid driving in unsafe places. In other words, it isn't helpful to be anxious about things you can't control, but useful to do so when you can control it. In the context of video games, you absolutely have control over the situation, but what exactly can you have anxiety about? You may be afraid to fail, afraid of rejection, or afraid of being verbally attacked. If you end up losing a match, you may feel shame because you expect yourself or want to be better than that. If you don't succeed, then others may reject you because you aren't good enough for them. And maybe last time you failed, someone told you how badly you played and made it even worse for you. While these are all valid concerns, let's compare the consequences. You're way more likely to experience failure or rejection in a video game than a fatal accident, but how bad is that? Well, it is a game, so failure shouldn't mean too much, so long as you have other meaningful things in your life. What if your friends don't like you because you aren't as good as them? There always will be people who dislike you for whatever reason. If you're bad, people dislike you, and if you're good, more people will dislike you. Everyone deals with anxiety and rejection and failure, but not everyone can manage it well. In fact, people who are successful have more reasons to be anxious. They have an expectation to continue succeeding. They have more responsibilities. They have to compete to stay relevant. Meanwhile, if you're new and fail, you've got nothing to lose. You can only keep getting better. But if you're afraid to fail, which is the best teacher, and you avoid situations that you can fail at, you will never learn. If you think anxiety is something wrong with you, then you won't ever get over it because you'll worry that you'll have anxiety and then you'll have a negative feedback loop. You could even say that generally intelligent people experience more anxiety because they have the capacity to think of all those potential future consequences, which can be super complicated. It is a trade-off that you sometimes over-prepare for things, which can be very mentally taxing, but when you are sufficiently prepared because of it, it's a good thing. But rather than going for the ignorance is bliss path, you can use your knowledge to help you manage it. So here are some tips for managing anxiety. Think about the statistics. If you fear failure or rejection, compare the risks and costs to other similar activities to understand the scope. If I do this, then it could be bad. But if I don't do this, it could still be bad. Perhaps it isn't so bad to fail and that there are benefits to failing. If your friends reject you, maybe they weren't the right ones anyway, and it can allow you to move on, so there's really a trade-off. Find new friends who will accept you for who you are and ask them to do the thing you are anxious about with you. If you have anxiety about driving, carpool to share the responsibility. Likewise, if you're anxious about playing competitive modes in games, bring a friend along with you. If they are afraid of it too, chances are they will appreciate the invitation. Not only will you reduce some of the anxiety, but it will make you experience more enjoyment and give you more of a reason to want to go back and do it again. As a content creator, I get many people who come to me seeking to vent their frustrations for things that aren't even in my control or my fault. And it used to really tax me of my mental state. But realizing that there are many more people who support and praise me really puts it into perspective. So getting through the bad moments is important. One of the best and most socially acceptable ways to cope with stress is through humor. As my platform is online, memes and other kinds of jokes are very common. Using humor has really helped me to deal with failing to meet expectations or other players who direct toxicity towards me. For example, there are many players who really care about winning a lot more than exploring the amazing class design of Guild Wars 2, and while none of us are wrong, the person who brings their frustrations on the other is usually the wrong one. And when I'm testing out a new build or class that I'm not the best at, sometimes they'll get angry at me. I created an analogy for the situation. There are the journeymen who don't worry about the outcome but rather the journey. Then there are the endsmen who, as you may guess, are mostly concerned about the end result. I'll verbally say during my streams that the endsman cometh, or that they can enjoy their journey. Another example is role-playing or describing the situation in terms of pop culture. Like when my team saves me, I say that the riders of Rohan have finally arrived. Essentially, don't make the situation worse by overreacting and giving people more relevance than they deserve, and memes are a good way of coping. Next, and probably the most important tip, is repeated exposure. The number one thing that reduces anxiety towards a situation is experiencing that situation. Many people have asked me how I can maintain my cool while in competitive matches or difficult situations, and the reality is that I've done it a lot or I've thought about it a lot. The best analogy for this is when you get into cold water. It's rough at first, but if you go in by the feet first, then your legs, then your body, it's a much more gradual process that eases the shock. That shock is what creates panic. So becoming accustomed to that experience will eventually reduce your fear of it. You can create a schedule to go in a competitive match once a week on a certain day, then go up to 2 a week, then maybe 1 a day. That way, if it's a really rough experience, you have that predetermined logical escape route where you don't feel the expectation or need to do more, but you still at least did a little. Creating a schedule or routine can not only make the experience more bearable, but it can allow you more time to prepare for it, which is one of the best ways to reduce anxiety because it gives you a feeling of control over the situation. If you just think about how risky driving a car is, but don't do anything to prepare for it, you'll absolutely have a good reason to be anxious. So don't give yourself a reason to be anxious. If you design and prepare a route to know exactly where you'll need to go to get to your destination, it can free your mind from that tax. In the context of gaming, there are plenty of guides out there on multiple platforms designed to help newer players get up to speed. For example, this video is probably one way you've already begun preparing for it. And if you want more videos like this, you should absolutely check out my other video called Decision Making in Guild Wars 2, which shows the exact opposite problem of not having enough anxiety to be able to self-analyze. It also covers the issue of caring too much about the rating outcome of a match and not the actions that lead up to it. Essentially, if you're too caught up in the future instead of the present, you'll make bad decisions, and the same goes for anxiety. Because anxiety affects you physically, you can often control your anxiety not only mentally, but physically. Taking deep breaths, closing your eyes, and meditating can often stabilize your heart rate and anxiety. So before and after you do an activity you're anxious about, you should meditate. It doesn't require much, but if you aren't sure how to meditate, you should really check out Dr. K, who runs a channel called HealthyGamerGG on YouTube. I'll leave a link to them in the description of this video, and they have a lot of good content on mental health that is accessible and easy to understand for those it actually affects. One final suggestion I have is to get used to discomfort. One of the main issues we have in modern society is that convenience dominates. If you are ever hungry, you can go to the nearest fast food place or 7-Eleven and get food. If you are ever uncomfortable with a situation online, you can just log off. If you're ever too lazy to read a book, you can just listen to the audio version or watch a YouTube video that explains the book for you. While I personally am an oral learner and prefer to hear rather than read, and think that this freedom is better for us, I do understand the cost of it, and it is that we become too comfortable and we become afraid to leave the comfort zone when we become accustomed to it. If you learn how to overcome one uncomfortable situation, you often can use similar processes or discipline in the future. You can start by practicing intermittent fasting, which is essentially going several hours a day without eating. Maybe you eat a breakfast and then wait until dinner. Even though you may be hungry, you really don't need to eat immediately as soon as you start feeling it. Especially in Western countries, we've got this 3 meals a day schedule that often makes us eat even when we aren't hungry, and our body gets used to having that much food, and then when you don't have that much, you get hungrier than your body really needs to be. Don't get me wrong, you should absolutely listen to your instincts if you need to go to the bathroom or are experiencing some sort of pain. Relieve that. But unless you are an athlete or you're trying to grow muscle, you really don't need to be eating that much. But still, drink plenty of water. Hydration is important. You can also focus on your posture, which is not only healthy, but can keep your mind focused on the present rather than the future. It may not be comfortable, but if you get some shoes or sandals you can wear while at your computer, it will help remind you to maintain good posture. Usually when I'm at the computer, I'm sitting in all different kinds of positions because I'm more comfortable that way, but it's terrible for posture. I recently bought a pair of sandals which I wear at the desk, and I usually obsess over anything that touches the floor, which is a completely different topic, but essentially I don't like to sit on my shoes because they're dirty, and it helps me to keep my feet planted on the ground and my posture improves. None of this is professional medical advice, but it is what helped me, and anyone who has experienced overcoming anxiety can comment down below what helped them. Learn from others, follow my Twitch, and subscribe to me on YouTube to prepare for those situations, and I will see you all next time.